Hi team, welcome back. Thought we might just do a little bit of a little video on working with a fit ball. If you've got a fit ball at home in the corner of the lounge room that you haven't used in a little while, or if you are in a gym and you see a fit ball in the corner and you think, oh, I probably should use that every now and then, just thought I'd give you some hints and tips and reminders and some of the stuff that you can do with them to remind you to give you some ideas. Lots that you can do with them. I'm just going to go through some little basics, some bits and pieces that I teach on and off in different classes. First thing I'm going to look at is some extension of your spine. So we spend a lot of time in flexion. Flexion is where, if we're talking in relation to the spine, where the spine is curled forwards. So we actually want to look at some extension work as well. We actually open our spine up and take it the other way. A nice way to do it is by using the ball. I suggest you take the ball and kneel behind it. So you're going to have the ball literally just touching your thighs. Then you would slide your hands down the outside of the ball and bring your chest over the ball. To help you hold the ball, you wriggle your thighs in again. So you've wriggled your knees in a bit closer and you can sort of feel that you've got hold of the ball with your legs and your stomach. You then bring your nose down towards the ball and you interlace your hands behind your head. So depending on how your back feels on any given day or how it feels day to day, it will depend on how high you come. So you would breathe in and you would breathe out to just do a little lift through the front of your chest and then you come back down. So depending on how that feels in your lower back, you might be able to come higher, okay? If you feel like you're losing the ball, you just wriggle your thighs in again. The breath will help you get there. So you want to open up through the front of your chest and lift yourself up. A couple of the key things to think about when you're doing it is length. You want to get length in your spine. So I lift myself up of the ball and I'm making myself as long as I can. So I literally feel like I'm peeling my head towards the ceiling and then you come back down. So that's a little bit of extension work with your spine. Well, listen to your body. If it makes your lower back grumpy, you're obviously not going to come so high. You also want to keep your elbows nice and wide. So when you come up, you want to keep your elbows nice and wide, like you're trying to reach your elbows on the opposite side of the room. So there's some little extension work with your spine. It's also a lovely thing to use to relax your legs and your hip flexors and your lower back. So I often teach clients to lie down, put their legs on top of the ball. So literally legs on top of the ball, legs on top of the ball allows the leg muscles to relax. So leg muscles stay nice and relaxed and I can actually move the bones and the femur and the bones in my thighs without making my leg muscles do much of the work. So you'd roll the ball out, so you've got probably your calves on top of the ball, and it's important to keep your pelvis still. So when you lie like this, you're in neutral spine, you've got a little arch underneath your back, and you want to be able to keep that little arch. If that arch disappears, it means that your pelvis is likely rolled back. Arms, you could have them anywhere, by your side, out a little bit wider. A little bit wider is going to give you a bit more stability, but you could certainly have them just down by your side. Then you just gently roll the ball towards you, and you're just coming as far as you can without your pelvis tipping backwards and that little arch that's in your spine disappearing, and then roll away. So it's a really simple exercise. You roll the ball towards you and you roll it away without your pelvis moving. What that means is the femur and the ball and socket joint, so the femur is the bone in your thigh with the ball and socket joint, is moving, but the pelvis is not. So if you picture that in your mind, the ball and socket joint in your hip is rolling forwards and backwards. So you're mobilizing that hip joint, but your pelvis is still. So you're stabilizing the pelvis and mobilizing the hip joint. So that ball and socket joint needs to be moved. It's going to help you maintain mobility in that hip joint. It's important to make sure you maintain that neutral spine. So if you bring the ball too far in, your pelvis is going to tip back, your spine's going to push into the mat. You want to be able to maintain that neutral spine and just roll backwards and forwards. Also working side to side, you can choose, your legs might come and rest completely on top of the ball, or you might just have your heels, but you've got what we call tabletop or that 90-degree position. Right? Today I'm going to rest my calves on top of the ball. You want to have that 90 degrees. This one, you put your arms a little bit wider. So you want to go wider, a little bit wider onto the floor, and just engagement of the arms into the floor. So it's going to help you switch back muscles on. We're going to move the ball from left to right. Now, it is really easy just to roll the ball from left to right. That's really easy. But what we want you to do is do it as slowly as possible and control the ball. So you slowly roll over, So my hip lifts, but my rib cage is staying connected to the mat. So as I move, I'm not letting my shoulders lift. And then I slowly pull the ball back into the middle of my mat, and then I go to the other side. So like we said just before, it's really easy to roll the ball. You want to be able to control the ball. When you've got control of the ball, it's your obliques and your abdominals doing the work. So your obliques, the muscles down the side of your torso, they make up part of your abdominal muscles, and your abdominals that are doing the work. So you'll find, most people will find that one side will be easier for you to control than the other side. We always sort of tend to have a dominant side in relation to our obliques. We carry things on one side of our body, dominantly more than the other. So you might feel that on the one side you've got more control than you do on the other. So you're going to work your obliques, you're going to work your abdominals by going slowly. The other thing that happens when your legs are on the ball like this is your leg muscles are relaxed. So my hip flexors are not doing any of their work. There's a Pilates exercise called side to side where we do the same movement without the ball. Without the ball, sometimes your hip flexors can take over, so the muscles in the front of your legs will start to help out. By using the ball, you take those muscle groups out of the equation, and you're just using your obliques. So that's working your obliques and relaxing your hip flexor muscles. Bridging, you can bridge on the ball, legs out on the ball. When you bridge on a ball, it's more of a straight lift as opposed to an articulation of your spine. You can challenge yourself by choosing your arm position. If your arms are directly by your side, it'll be a little bit more challenging. If you go a little bit wider, you'll have a little bit more stability. And when you lift, you want to come up into a nice long straight line. So you want to have a straight line from your ribs to your hips to your knees, as opposed to a little bit of a dip or your ribs flaring too much towards the ceiling. So that nice long straight line. And then you slowly articulate down. Your arms, you can use them a little bit. You'll need to use them a little bit to sort of push into the floor. That will help you switch your back muscles on. And you just want that nice elongated lift. You'll feel the back of your legs working as you come right up and then lower down. If you wanted to challenge yourself more, you could have your heels further out on the ball. So by taking your legs away so you're just on your heels, you've got less stability and less support from the ball. That would be more challenging. You could also hold one leg up while you're up there and then lower it down. That will challenge your balance more. You could roll the ball in and out. That will really get your hamstrings working. If you roll that ball in and out, make sure that you don't drop through your hips. Otherwise, just lifting and lowering is a lovely way to do bridging on the ball. Let's look at some quadruped exercises. So, if being on your hands and knees for an exercise like quadruped that we teach in Pilates, where we're on our hands and knees and moving like this with arms and legs, if your wrists are grumpy or you've got a wrist issue, you could lie over the top of the ball. It will also challenge your balance. So you lie yourself over the top of the ball, but you don't want to come too far that you feel your feet lifting. So you don't want to be like this, you want to have your feet down on the ground. Find a stability, and the lifts don't need to be too high, but the key is to keep the ball still. So you start lifting one arm at a time, and you don't want to move your shoulders. The ball will give you really good feedback. You're just lifting as high as you can without your shoulders moving too much and the ball moving. Keep yourself nice and long through your spine, so you don't want to drop your head down. You want to still have a nice elongation through your head, neck and shoulders. So you'd start with your arms, then you'd work to your legs, just lifting and lowering, trying to keep the ball as still as you can. And again, you'll probably find one side is easier than the other, or one side you feel you've got more control than the other. Then you could go into opposite arm and leg, where you lift your opposite arm and leg up at the same time. That would be a progression of the exercise, so it's going to be a little bit more challenging. Again, you want to keep the ball nice and still and just make sure that you're moving your arms and legs. It's obviously going to challenge your balance. It's going to get your limbs moving and keeping your torso nice and still, so it's core related as well. And it's just a lovely little exercise. Just watch your balance when you're moving around on these things. Just take your time moving through them. Some lateral flexion we'll look at next. So the body moves in three patterns generally. It moves forwards and backwards. It moves sideways, that's our lateral flexion, and it moves in rotation. Something like playing a game of cricket would take you through all three ranges of that motion, all three ranges of pattern of movement. If you're restricted in one of them, the movement will go to the weakest joint. So you need to have good lateral flexion to be able to have good rotation. If your lateral flexion is restricted, your rotation will be restricted. So without going into too much detail on there, lateral flexion is the sideways movement. So you could use the ball and just roll the ball away, reach up and over, and then come back. Now my knees and my hips stay in alignment. So it's not this, okay? So there's a straight line, I'm firmly standing in with my knees, and my gaze is across the room. And if you look at the same spot as you do it, you'll keep that elong exhalation through your spine as you go over. So as opposed to swinging out into it or looking down. So looking where your eyes go, your body will go, so your gaze is important. Then you'd obviously do the other side, reach up and reach over. If you wanted to move it into some rotation through the body, you could sit up on the ball. Well, check your alignment when you always sit on a ball. You want to make sure that your knees and your hips and are all in straight alignment as opposed to sort of this sort of position. You want to make sure you're sitting up nice and tall. Again, the gaze is important, so I'm going to look at a spot across the room and I'm going to keep my eyes on that sort of horizontal line as I do my rotation. Hands come across the chest, sitting tall, and then you twist. So you twist yourself around just within the range that feels comfortable, and you keep the ball still. So try not to move the ball. If the ball's moving, my hips are moving, I want to just move the top part of my body around through my torso. So a nice little rotation of your spine is a good thing to do. We're going to do one more little thing, a little bit more abdominal work using the ball. So the key here, it is a sort of a version of a standing roll down, which is an exercise we teach in Pilates. The key is to keep your hips and your knees in alignment. Sometimes in class I stick a foam roller in between my clients' legs so that they get feedback if their hips swing backwards. So it's kneeling cat is also a version that we do on the apparatus, which is a similar sort of exercise. If you think of the way a cat moves and curls its spine, that's part of this movement. So you gently tuck your chin to your chest, so you're going to look down towards your ball. Then you're going to start to roll your spine forwards, and as you do, you're going to roll the ball away. But your knees and your hips are staying in alignment, and your arms stay on the ball, and I'm going to take my back out to be somewhat straight and horizontal to the ground. Then I'm going to keep my hips still, and I'm going to move my spine as I roll that ball back in, and then come up nice and tall. So your hips will want to swing backwards. That will, your brain will say, this is a much easier movement if I just let my hips swing backwards, but you want to keep your knees and your hips in alignment. You roll right out and stretch your back out, and then you lead with your tailbone, you curl your spine, you want to roll your spine back up and come up nice and tall. So I'm just going to do one more. It feels lovely. Tuck the chin to the chest, round through the spine. As you roll that ball forwards, your forearms will end up on the ball, your back goes out to a nice horizontal line along the ground, leading with your tailbones. I'm tucking my tailbone under and I'm coming back up, and I'm coming right back up to a high kneeling position. So there's just a few little ideas to play around with the ball. If you're in the gym and you see them in the corner and you think, oh, I should probably do something with that, or if you've got one at home that you've used in the past and you've forgotten some ideas of how to use it, there's just a couple of little hints and tips and Pilates ideas of how to play with a football. I'll keep playing with some little videos in due course and put them up as we go along. Have a lovely day. Bye, team.